Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie King Kong in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called King Kong. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting about this movie in today's video. I am going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. King Kong is a 2005 epic adventure monster film co-written, produced, and directed by Peter Jackson. It is the 9th entry in the King Kong franchise and the second remake of the 1933 film of the same title, the first being the 1976 remake. The film stars Naomi Watts, Jack Black, and Adrien Brody. Set in 1933, it follows the story of an ambitious filmmaker who coerces his cast and hired ship crew to travel to mysterious Skull Island. There they encounter prehistoric creatures and a legendary giant gorilla known as Kong, whom they capture and take to New York City. Development began in early 1995, when Universal Pictures approached Jackson to direct the remake of the original 1933 film. The project stalled in early 1997, as several ape and giant monster-related films were under production at the time, and Jackson planned to direct the Lord of the Rings film series. As the first two films in the Rings trilogy became commercially successful, Universal went back to Jackson in early 2003, expressing interest in restarting development on the project, to which Jackson eventually agreed. Filming for King Kong took place in New Zealand from September 2004 to March 2005. It is currently one of the most expensive films ever produced, as its budget climbed from an initial $150 million to a then record-breaking $207 million. King Kong premiered at New York City on December 5, 2005, and was theatrically released in Germany and United States on December 14. The film garnered positive reviews and eventually appeared in several top 10 lists for 2005. It was praised for the special effects, performances, sense of spectacle, and comparison to the 1933 original, though some criticisms were raised over its 3-hour runtime. It was a commercial success, grossing over $556.9 million, and became the 4th highest-grossing film in Universal Pictures history at that time, and the 5th highest-grossing film of 2005. It also generated $100 million in DVD sales upon its home video release in March 2006. It won 3 Academy Awards for Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. A tie-in video game was released alongside the film, which also became a commercial and critical success. Plot: in 1933, during the Great Depression, struggling New York City vaudeville performer Ann Darrow is hired by financially troubled filmmaker Carl Denham to star in a film with actor Bruce Baxter. Anne is hesitant to join the picture until she learns her favorite playwright, Jack Driscoll, is the screenwriter. Filming takes place on the SS Venture under Captain Inglehorn, and under Carl's pretense it will be sailing to Singapore. In truth, Carl intends to film the mysterious Skull Island. Captain Inglehorn reconsiders the voyage, prompted by his crew's speculation of trouble ahead. During the voyage, Anne and Jack fall in love. The Venture receives a radio message informing Inglehorn there is a warrant for Carl's arrest due to his defiance of the studio's orders to cease production and instructing Inglehorn to divert to Rangoon, but the ship becomes lost in fog and runs aground on Skull Island. Carl and others, including his film crew consisting of cameraman Herb, assistant Preston, and boom operator Mike, explore the island and are attacked by natives who kill Mike and a crewman. Inglehorn rescues Carl's group, but as they all prepare to leave, the natives secretly abduct Anne to offer her as a sacrifice to Kong, a 25-foot-tall, 7.6 meters ape. Jack notices Anne's disappearance, and the crew returns to the island, but Kong flees with Anne into the jungle. Carl catches a glimpse of Kong and becomes determined to film him. Anne wins Kong over with her juggling and dancing skills and begins to grasp his intelligence and capacity for emotion. Inglehorn organizes a rescue party, led by his first mate Hayes and Jack, and accompanied by Carl, Herb, Baxter, and Preston. The party gets caught between a herd of Brontosaurus baxteri and a pack of Utahraptor-like Venatosaurus civiticus hunting them. With Herb and several other men killed in the resulting stampede, Baxter and others return to the ship. The remaining party members continue through the jungle when Kong attacks, making them fall into a ravine where Carl loses his camera. Kong rescues Anne from 3 Tyrannosaurus-like Vastasaurus Rex, bringing her to his den in the mountains. The remaining rescue party are attacked by giant insects in the ravine, resulting in the death of Hayes and most of the rescue party, but Preston, Carl, Jack, and Hayes' apprentice Jimmy are rescued by Baxter and Inglehorn. Jack searches for Anne alone, while Carl decides to capture Kong. Jack finds Kong's lair and accidentally awakens him, but escapes with Anne. They arrive at the wall with Kong pursuing them. As Anne begs the crew not to harm him, Kong kills several sailors, but is subdued when Carl knocks him out with chloroform. In New York City that winter, Carl presents Kong, the Eighth Wonder of the World, on Broadway, starring Baxter and an imprisoned Kong. Anne, who refused to take part in the performance, is played by an anonymous chorus girl. Agitated by the chorus girl not being Anne and flashes from cameras, Kong breaks free from the chains, wrecks the theater, and bursts out into the streets of New York in search of Anne, chasing Jack before encountering her again. The U.S. Army attacks, and Kong tries getting Anne and himself to safety by climbing to the top of the Empire State Building. 6 United States Navy biplanes arrive. Kong downs 3 of them, but is mortally wounded from the plane's gunfire and falls from the building after he dies. As Jack reaches the top of the building to comfort and embrace Anne, civilians, policemen, and soldiers gather around the beast's corpse in the street, one bystander commenting the airplanes got him. Carl makes his way through the crowd, takes one last look at Kong, and before walking away says sadly, "It wasn't the airplanes. It was beauty killed the beast." Cast Naomi Watts as Anne Darrow, a struggling vaudeville actress who is desperate for work. Carl first meets her when she tries to steal an apple from a fruit stand. Further into the voyage, she falls in love with Jack and forms a special relationship with Kong. Andy Serkis as Kong, motion capture, a 25-foot, 7.6 meters tall prehistoric ape who resembles a mountain gorilla and is around 100 to 150 years old. He is the last of his species, Megapermatus Kong, and the possible descendant of both the Coraopithecus and the Gigantopithecus. Serkis also plays Lumpy, the ship's cook, barber, and surgeon. A brave sailor, he warns Denham about rumors he has heard about Skull Island and Kong. Adrien Brody as Jack Driscoll, a screenwriter who falls in love with Anne. He unwittingly becomes part of the voyage when, while delivering a script to Denham, he is deliberately delayed by the latter before he can get off the venture. He is the only member of the crew who agrees with Anne that Kong should be left alone. Jack Black as Carl Denham, a film director who obtained the map to Skull Island. Due to his debts, Carl starts to lose his moral compass and obsesses over his film to the point that he disregards safety. Thomas Kretschmann as Captain Inglehorn, the German captain of the venture. Inglehorn shows a dislike for Denham, presumably because of his obsessive nature. Colin Hanks as Preston, Denham's neurotic but honest personal assistant. Jamie Bell as Jimmy, a naive teenager who was found on the venture wild and abandoned. Evan Park as Benjamin Ben Hayes, Inglehorn's first mate and a mentor to Jimmy, who leads Anne's rescue mission because of his army training and combat experience gained during World War I. Lobo Chan as Choi, Lumpy's best friend and a janitor on the venture. Kyle Chandler as Bruce Baxter, an actor who specializes in adventure films. He abandons Anne's rescue mission but brings Inglehorn to rescue the search party from the insect pit and is given credit for rescuing Anne during the Broadway display of Kong. John Sumner as Herb, Denham's loyal cameraman. Craig Hall as Mike, Denham's soundman for the journey. William Johnson as Manny, an elderly vaudevillian actor and colleague of Darrow. Mark Hadlow as Harry, a struggling vaudevillian actor. Jed Brophy and Todd Rippon appeared in the film as crew members. In addition, director Jackson appears with makeup artist Rick Baker, who had portrayed Kong and designed makeup for the 1976 version, as the pilot and gunner on the airplane that kills the title character. His children appear as New York children. The Lord of the Rings co-producer Rick Porras and the Shawshank Redemption director Frank Darabont appear as gunners in the other airplanes, and Bob Burns and his wife appear as New York bystanders. Frequent Jackson collaborator Howard Shore makes a cameo appearance as the conductor of the New York theater from where Kong escapes. Shore was initially set to compose for the film before his exit. Watts, Black, and Brody were the first choices for their respective roles, with no other actors considered. In preparation for her role, Watts met with the original Ann Darrow, Fay Wray. Jackson wanted Ray to make a cameo appearance and say the final line of dialogue, but she died during pre-production at 96 years old. Black was cast as Carl Denham based on his performance in the 2000 film High Fidelity, which had impressed Jackson. For inspiration, Black studied P.T. Barnum and Orson Welles. "I didn't study Welles move for move. It was just to capture the spirit. Very reckless guy. I had tapes of him drunk off his ass." 13. The native extras on Skull Island were portrayed by a mix of Asian, African, Maori, and Polynesian actors, sprayed with dark makeup to achieve a consistent pigmentation. Production development. Earlier attempts in 1990s. Peter Jackson was 9 years old when he first saw the 1933 film and was in tears in front of the television when Kong was shot and fell off the Empire State Building. At age 12, he attempted to recreate the film using his parents' Super 8mm film camera and a model of Kong made of wire and rubber with his mother's fur coat for the hair, but eventually gave up on the project. King Kong eventually became his favorite film and was the primary inspiration for his decision to become a filmmaker as a teenager. He read books about the making of King Kong and collected memorabilia, as well as articles from famous monsters of filmland. Jackson paid tribute to the 1933 film by including Skull Island as the origin of the zombie plague in his 1992 film Braindead. During the filming of Jackson's 1996 film The Frighteners, Universal Pictures was impressed with Jackson's dailies and early visual effects footage. The studio was adamant to work with Jackson on his next project, and in late 1995, 16 offered him the chance to direct a remake of the 1954 film Creature from the Black Lagoon. He turned down the offer, but Universal became aware of Jackson's obsession with King Kong and subsequently offered him the opportunity to direct that remake. The studio did not have to worry about lawsuits concerning the film rights from RKO Pictures, the studio behind the 1933 film, because the King Kong character is held in the public domain. Jackson initially turned down the King Kong offer, but he quickly became disturbed by the fact that someone else would take it over, Jackson continued, and make it into a terrible film. That haunted me, and I eventually said yes to Universal. At the same time, Jackson was working with Harvey Weinstein and Miramax Films to purchase the film rights of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, while 20th Century Fox was trying to hire him for the 2001 remake of Planet of the Apes. Jackson turned down Planet of the Apes, and because Weinstein was taking longer than expected to buy the Lord of the Rings rights, Jackson decided to move forward on King Kong. Weinstein was furious, and, as a result, Jackson proposed a deal between Universal and Miramax that the two studios would equally finance King Kong with Jackson's production company, Wingnut Films. Universal would receive distribution rights in the United States, while Miramax would cover foreign territories. Jackson was also warranted the right of final cut privilege, a percentage of the gross profits, as well as artistic control. Universal allowed all filming and visual effects to be handled entirely in New Zealand. The deal was settled in April 1996, and Jackson, along with wife Fran Walsh, began working on the King Kong script. In the original draft, Anne was the daughter of famed English archaeologist Lord Linwood Darrow, exploring ancient ruins in Sumatra. They would come into conflict with Denham during his filming, and they would uncover a hidden Kong statue and the map of Skull Island. This would indicate that the island natives were the last remnants of a cult religion that had once thrived on Asia's mainland. Instead of a playwright, Jack was the first mate and an ex-World War I fighter pilot, still struggling with the loss of his best friend, who had been killed in battle during a World War I prologue. The cameraman Herb is the only supporting character in the original draft who made it to the final version. The fight between Kong and the three V-Rex also changed from the original draft. In the draft, Anne is actually caught in the V-Rex's jaws, where she becomes wedged and slashed by the teeth. After the fight, Kong gets her out, but she is suffering from a fever, from which she then recovers. Universal approved of the script with Robert Zemeckis as executive producer, and pre-production for King Kong commenced. The plan was to begin filming sometime in 1997, for a summer 1998 release date. Weta Digital and Weta Workshop, under the supervision of Richard Taylor and Christian Rivers, began work on early visual effects tests, specifically the complex task of building a CGI version of New York City circa 1933. Jackson and Walsh progressed with a second draft script, sets were being designed, and location scouting commenced in Sumatra and New Zealand. 16. In late 1996, Jackson flew to production of the 1997 film Titanic in Mexico to discuss the part of Anne Darrow with Kate Winslet, with whom he previously worked with on his 1994 film Heavenly Creatures. Minnie Driver was also being reportedly considered. 14. Jackson's choices for Jack Driscoll and Carl Denham included George Clooney and Robert De Niro. However, development for King Kong was stalled in January 1997, when Universal became concerned over the upcoming release of the 1998 film Godzilla, as well as other ape-related remakes with the 1998 film Mighty Joe Young and the 2001 film Planet of the Apes. Universal abandoned King Kong in February 1997 after Weta Workshop and Weta Digital had already designed 6 months' worth of pre-production. Jackson then decided to start work on the Lord of the Rings film series, revival of the project. With the financial and critical success of the 2001 film The Fellowship of the Ring and the 2002 film The Two Towers. 19. Universal approached Jackson in early 2003. 8. During the post-production of The Return of the King, concerning his interest in restarting development on King Kong. In March 2003, Universal set a target December 2005 release date, and Jackson and Walsh brought The Lord of the Rings co-writer Philippa Boyens on to help rewrite their 1996 script. Jackson offered New Line Cinema the opportunity to co-finance with Universal, but they declined. Universal and Jackson originally projected a $150 million budget, which eventually rose to $175 million. Jackson made a deal with Universal whereby he would be paid a $20 million salary against 20% of the box office gross for directing, producing, and co-writing. He shared that fee with co-writers Walsh, which also covered her producing credit, and Boyens. However, if King Kong were to go over its $175 million budget, the penalties would be covered by Jackson. Immediately after the completion of The Return of the King, Weta Workshop and Weta Digital, supervised by Taylor, Rivers, and Joe Lettery, started pre-production on King Kong. Jackson brought back most of the crew he had on the Lord of the Rings series, including cinematographer Andrew Lesnie, production designer Grant Major, art directors Simon Bright and Dan Henna, conceptual designer Alan Lee, and editor Jamie Selkirk Jackson. Walsh and Boyens began to write a new script in late October 2003. Jackson acknowledged that he was highly unsatisfied with the original 1996 script. That was actually just Fran and Peter very hurriedly getting something down on paper, Boyens explained. It was more one of many possible ways the story could go. The writers chose to base the new screenplay on the 1933 film, rather than the 1996 script. They also included scenes from James Ashmore Creelman's screenplay that were either abandoned or omitted during production of the original film. In the scene where Kong shakes the surviving sailors pursuing Anne and himself from a log into the ravine, for example, directors Marion Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedzak originally intended to depict giant spiders emerging from the rock to devour their bodies. This was cut from the original release print, and remains known to Kong fans only via a rare still that appeared in Famous Monsters of Filmland. Jackson included this scene and elaborated upon it. Jackson, Walsh, and Boyens also cited Delos W. Lovelace's 1932 novelization of King Kong as inspiration, which included the character Lumpy, Andy Serkis. To make the relationship between Anne Darrow and Kong plausible, the writers studied hours of guerrilla footage. Jackson also optioned Early Havoc, a memoir written by vaudeville performer June Havoc to help Walsh and Boyens flesh out Anne Darrow's characterization. Carl Denham was intentionally modeled after and inspired by Orson Welles. 8. Their new draft was finished in February 2004. Filming principal photography started on September 6, 2004, at Camperdown Studios in Miramar, New Zealand. Camperdown housed the native village and the Great Wall, while the streets of New York City were constructed on its backlot and at Gracefield in Lower Hutt, New Zealand. The majority of the SS Venture scenes were shot aboard a full-scale deck constructed in the parking lot at Camperdown Studio and then were backed with a green screen, with the ocean digitally added in post. Scenes set in the Broadway theater from which King Kong makes his escape were filmed in Wellington's Opera House and at the Auckland Civic Theatre. Filming also took place at Stone Street Studios, where a new soundstage was constructed to accommodate one of the sets. Over the course of filming, the budget went from $175 million to $207 million over additional visual effects work needed, and Jackson extending the film's running time by 30 minutes. Jackson Cover. The film's budget climbed from an initial $150 million to a then record-breaking $207 million and received a subsidy of $34 million from New Zealand, making it at one point the most expensive film yet made. Universal only agreed to such an outlay after seeing a screening of the unfinished film, to which executives responded enthusiastically. Marketing and promotion costs were an estimated $60 million. The film's length also grew. Originally set to be 135 minutes, it soon grew to 200, prompting Universal executives to fly to New Zealand to view a rough cut, but they liked it, so their concerns were addressed. Other difficulties included Peter Jackson's decision to change composers from Howard Shore to James Newton Howard 7 weeks before the film opened. Visual effects. Jackson saw King Kong as opportunity for technical innovations in motion capture, commissioning Christian Rivers of Weta Digital to supervise all aspects of Kong's performance. Jackson decided early on that he did not want Kong to behave like a human, and so he and his team studied hours of gorilla footage. Serkis was cast in the title role in April 2003 and prepared himself by working with gorillas at the London Zoo. He then traveled to Rwanda, observing the actions and behaviors of gorillas in the wild. Rivers explained that the detailed facial performance capture with Serkis was accomplished because of the similarities between human and gorilla faces. Gorillas have such a similar-looking set of eyes and brows, you can look at those expressions and transpose your own interpretation onto them. Photos of silverback gorillas were also superimposed on Kong's image in the early stages of animation. Serkis had to go through 2 hours of motion capture makeup every day, having 135 small markers attached to different spots on his face. Following principal photography, Serkis had to spend an additional 2 months on a motion capture stage, miming Kong's movements for the film's digital animators. Apart from Kong, Skull Island is inhabited by dinosaurs and other large fauna. Inspired by Dougal Dixon's works, the designers imagined what 65 million years or more of isolated evolution might have done to dinosaurs and the other creatures. Music. Main article, King Kong soundtrack. The original score was initially set to be composed by Howard Shore, who had written several cues for the film. Due to creative differences with Jackson, Shore opted out of the project in October 2005, and subsequently James Newton Howard replaced him. With scoring beginning by late October 2005, Howard had only 5 weeks to work on the film. As a result, he found the film hardest to compose. Recording sessions took place at the Sony Scoring Stage, California, and Todd A.O., Los Angeles, consisting of 108-piece orchestra and 40-member choir, and a varied range of instruments used there. The film's soundtrack includes Al Jolson's recording of I'm Sitting on Top of the World, Peggy Lee's Bye Bye Blackbird, and some themes from Max Steiner's soundtrack for the original 1933 film. The score was released on December 7, 2005, by Decca Records to positive response. Howard's score was later nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score. Marketing. The marketing campaign started in full swing on June 27, 2005, when the teaser trailer made its debut. First online at the official Volkswagen website at 8:45 p.m. EDT, then 8:55 p.m. EDT across media outlets owned by NBC Universal, the parent of Universal Studios, including NBC, Bravo, CNBC, and MSNBC. That trailer appeared in theaters attached to War of the Worlds, which opened on June 29th. Jackson also regularly published a series of production diaries which chronicled the film's production. The diaries started shortly after the DVD release of The Return of the King as a way to give Jackson's The Lord of the Rings fans a glimpse of his next project. These diaries are edited into broadband-friendly installments of 3 or 4 minutes each. They consist of features that would normally be seen in a making-of documentary, a tour of the set, a roving camera introducing key players behind the scene, a peek inside the sound booth during last-minute dubbing, or Andy Serkis doing his ape movements in a motion capture studio. A novelization of the film and a prequel novel entitled King Kong, The Island of the Skull, were also written. A multi-platform video game, entitled Peter Jackson's King Kong, was released, which featured an alternate ending. There was also a hardback book entitled The World of Kong, A Natural History of Skull Island, featuring artwork from Weta Workshop to describe the film's fictional wildlife. Jackson has expressed his desire to remaster the film in 3D at some point in the future. Jackson was also seen shooting with a 3D camera at times during the shoot of King Kong. Box office. In North America, King Kong grossed $9.8 million during its Wednesday opening and $50.1 million over its first weekend for a 5-day total of $66.2 million from around 7,500 screens at 3,568 theaters. 43. Some analysts considered these initial numbers disappointing, saying that studio executives had been expecting more $100,000. The film went on to gross $218.1 million in the North American market and ended up in the top 5 highest-grossing films of the year there. The film grossed an additional $338.8 million at the box office in other regions for a worldwide total of $556.9 million, which not only ranked it in the top 5 highest-grossing films of 2005 worldwide, but also helped the film bring back more than 2.5 times its production budget. During its home video release, King Kong sold over $100 million worth of DVDs in the largest 6-day performance in Universal Studios history. King Kong sold more than 7.6 million DVDs, accumulating nearly $194 million worth of sales numbers in the North American market alone. As of June 25, 2006, King Kong has generated almost $38 million from DVD rental gross spend. In February 2006, Turner Broadcasting System, TNT, TBS, and ABC paid Universal Pictures $26.5 million for the television rights to the film. Critical response. King Kong received acclaim from critics. On aggregate review site Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 84% based on 268 reviews, with an average rating of 7.9/10. The site's critical consensus reads, featuring state-of-the-art special effects, terrific performances, and a majestic sense of spectacle, Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong is a potent epic that's faithful to the spirit of the 1933 original. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 81 out of 100, based on 39 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A-. On an A+ to F scale. It was placed on the top 10 lists of several critics, with Roger Ebert giving it 4 stars and listed it as 2005's 8th best film, 56. The film received 4 Academy Award nominations for visual effects, sound mixing, Christopher Boyes, Michael Szymanczyk, Michael Hedges, Hammond Peak, sound editing, and production design, winning all but the last. Entertainment Weekly called the depiction of Kong the most convincing computer-generated character in film in 2005. Some criticized the film for retaining racist stereotypes that had been present in the 1933 film, though it was not suggested that Jackson had done this intentionally. King Kong ranks 450th on Empire magazine's 2008 list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. The Guardian reviewer Peter Bradshaw said that it certainly equals and even exceeds anything Jackson did in Lord of the Rings. However, Charlie Brooker, also of The Guardian, gave a negative review in which he describes the film as 16 times more overblown and histrionic than necessary. It was beauty killed the beast. There are astonishments to behold in Peter Jackson's new King Kong, but one sequence, relatively subdued, holds the key to the movie's success. Kong has captured Ann Darrow and carried her to his perch high on the mountain. He puts her down, not roughly, and then begins to roar, bare his teeth and pound his chest. Anne, an unemployed vaudeville acrobat, somehow instinctively knows that the gorilla is not threatening her, but trying to impress her by behaving as an alpha male, the king of the jungle. She doesn't know how Queen Kong would respond, but she does what she can. She goes into her stage routine, doing backflips, dancing like Chaplin, juggling 3 stones. Her instincts and empathy serve her well. Kong's eyes widen in curiosity, wonder, and finally what may pass for delight. From then on, he thinks of himself as the girl's possessor and protector. She is like a tiny beautiful toy that he has been given for his very own, and before long, they are regarding the sunset together, both of them silenced by its majesty. The scene is crucial because it removes the element of creepiness in the gorilla-girl relationship in the 2 earlier Kongs, 1933 and 1976, creating a wordless bond that allows her to trust him. When Jack Driscoll climbs the mountain to rescue her, he finds her comfortably nestled in Kong's big palm. Anne and Kong in this movie will be threatened by dinosaurs, man-eating worms, giant bats, loathsome insects, spiders, machine guns, and the Army Air Corps, and could fall to their death into chasms on Skull Island or from the Empire State Building. But Anne will be as safe as Kong can make her, and he will protect her even from her own species. The movie more or less faithfully follows the outlines of the original film, but this fundamental adjustment in the relationship between the beauty and the beast gives it heart, a quality the earlier film was lacking. Yes, Kong in 1933 cares for his captive, but she doesn't care so much for him. Kong was always misunderstood, but in the 2005 film, there is someone who knows it. As Kong ascends the skyscraper, Anne screams not because of the gorilla, but because of the attacks on the gorilla by a society that assumes he must be destroyed. The movie makes the same kind of shift involving a giant gorilla that Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977, did when he replaced 1950s attacks on alien visitors with a very 1970s attempt to communicate with them. By 2005, Spielberg was back to attacking them in War of the Worlds. King Kong is a magnificent entertainment. It is like the flowering of all the possibilities in the original classic film. Computers are used not merely to create special effects, but also to create style and beauty, to find a look for the film that fits its story. And the characters are not cardboard heroes or villains seen in stark outline, but quirky individuals with personalities. Consider the difference between Robert Armstrong, 1933, and Jack Black, 2005, as Carl Denham, the movie director who lands an unsuspecting crew on Skull Island. A Hollywood stereotype based on Cecil B. DeMille has been replaced by one who reminds us more of Orson Welles. And in the starring role of Anne Darrow, Naomi Watts expresses a range of emotion that Fay Wray, bless her heart, was never allowed in 1933. Never have damsels been in more distress, but Fay Wray mostly had to scream, while Watts looks into the gorilla's eyes and sees something beautiful there. There was a stir when Jackson informed the Home Office that his movie would run 187 minutes. The executives had something around 140 minutes in mind, so they could turn over the audience more quickly. Despite the greedy 20 minutes of paid commercials audiences now have inflicted upon them. After they saw the movie, their objections were stilled. Yes, the movie is a tad too long, and we could do without a few of the monsters and overturned elevated trains, but it is so well done that we are complaining, really, only about too much of a good thing. This is one of the great modern epics. Jackson, fresh from his Lord of the Rings trilogy, wisely doesn't show the gorilla or the other creatures until more than an hour into the movie. In this he follows Spielberg, who fought off producers who wanted the shark in Jaws to appear virtually in the opening titles. There is an hour of anticipation, of low ominous music, of subtle rumblings, of uneasy squints into the fog and mutinous grumblings from the crew, before the tramp steamer arrives at Skull Island, or more accurately, is thrown against its jagged rocks in the first of many scary action sequences. Although Naomi Watts makes a splendid heroine, there have been complaints that Jack Black and Adrien Brody are not precisely hero material. Nor should they be, in my opinion. They are a director and a writer. They do not require big muscles and square jaws. What they require are strong personalities that can be transformed under stress. Denham, the director, clings desperately to his camera, no matter what happens to him, and Driscoll, the writer, beats a strategic retreat before essentially rewriting his personal role in his own mind. Bruce Baxter, Kyle Chandler, is an actor who plays the movie's hero and now has to decide if he can play his role for real. And Preston, Colin Hanks, is a production assistant who, as is often the case, would be a hero if anybody would give him a chance. The result is a surprisingly involving and rather beautiful movie. One that will appeal strongly to the primary action audience, and also cross over to people who have no plans to see King Kong, but will change their minds the more they hear. I think the film even has a message, and it isn't that beauty killed the beast. It's that we feel threatened by beauty, especially when it overwhelms us, and we pay a terrible price when we try to deny its essential nature and turn it into a product or a target. This is one of the year's best films, distributed by Universal Pictures. Release dates: December 5, 2005 in New York City, December 13, 2005 in New Zealand, December 14, 2005 in United States. Running time 192 minutes, countries New Zealand, United States, language English. Thanks for watching.